irregular behavior, his sweating, his staggering, and his shaking hands. But he was unprofessional when he mentioned his off-the-cuff reactions to another driver. He broke confidentiality when he made the disparaging comment about Victor. He looks strung out. Sonny did what should never be done. He diagnosed. What should Sonny have done? After identifying irregular behavior, he should have gone to Joe, Victor's supervisor, to confirm confidentially what he saw. And if Joe confirmed what Sonny saw, they could then document it and approach Victor constructively. Instead, when Sonny said he didn't want to do a number on Victor and then went investigating unofficially, he set himself up. He accused Victor of drug use, got upset, and completely lost his credibility as a supervisor. He tried to diagnose Victor's problem with guesses. And while you have the right to document everything you see, you don't have the right to diagnose anything. If Sonny had used the 4 steps of constructive confrontation correctly, that unfortunate confrontation never would have happened. So let's replay that scene, and this time use the 4 steps to see if we can improve upon the outcome.
Sonny, look, I don't feel so good here. I'd love to talk to you, but I got my paperwork to finish.
Are you sure you're okay? Is there anything I can do to help?
No, it's just this flu flaring up. I'll be all right.
Do you know who Victor's supervisor is? I need to check on something.
Yeah, it's Joe. That's him.
Hey, Joe. Do you mind if I talk to you about Victor?
Sure, but come in my office to do that.
You know, he was really shaky out there, and he was really uncomfortable when I picked up on it. How's he been doing at work lately?
He's a nice guy and a pretty consistent worker. But now that you mention it, he used up all his sick days last month, and his terminal manager says he's been picking up late.
Why don't the 2 of us just go and ask him about it officially? I'd feel better about it.
Okay. We need to bring this book with the behavior incidents form in it. Look, this is the form.
Okay.
You've just seen identification and confirmation played out correctly as steps 1 and 2 of a constructive confrontation. Sonny did a couple of things right to start with. While still talking to Victor, Sonny asked him if he was okay, giving Victor a chance to explain. When Victor shrugged it off, Sonny didn't break confidentiality by making derisive comments to others in the lunchroom. He found out who Victor's supervisor was and took his observations straight to him. Even though Sonny considered himself Victor's friend, he didn't get caught in the trap of personal involvement or trying to fix the situation himself. He knows that as a supervisor, he's responsible for drivers' performance. He's also responsible for providing a safe workplace. Sonny has to deal with his suspicions officially by identifying and confirming the physical signs that indicate Victor might not be fit for duty. Sonny correctly checked out Victor's irregular behavior with another supervisor to see if there was reasonable suspicion, meaning, was there enough identified behavioral problems to indicate alcohol and drug involvement or possibly other medical problems? The supervisors were also prepared to use their company's behavior incident form to document the incident. A sample of this form can be found in your manual's Appendix C. Regardless of the outcome of the upcoming confrontation with Victor over his fitness for duty, this situation and any other situations like it should be documented. Here's what happened next.
Victor, Joe and I are your supervisors. We're here to ask you what's wrong. You've been staggering, you're sweating. Joe's seen it too.
Oh, okay, Sonny, I'll come out. Look, Sonny, It's not what you think.
It's not what we think, Victor. It is our responsibility to find out what's going on when we see unusual behavior.
Come on, Joe. I'm okay. I'm seeing a doctor for my problem.
You're seeing a doctor? Okay, what's the problem?
I just found out I'm diabetic. Well, please don't say anything. I can't afford to lose my job.
I believe you, Victor, but we've got to follow company policy. So let us have the syringe so that we can have it confirmed. We all need to sign the evidence documentation form too.
Joe, we have to take Victor down to the collection site for reasonable cause testing.
You know, Victor, if you're a diabetic using insulin, I really can't put you back on the road.
Sonny and Joe were right on track. Their job was a lot easier because they followed the 4 steps of constructive confrontation. To complete steps 3 and 4, they wanted to confirm what appeared to be physical impairment, so they calmly confronted Victor with observations, not accusations. They gave Victor a chance to explain after Sonny told him what he'd identified. He said he'd seen staggering and sweating, and then said Joe saw it too. We can now imagine that Sonny has learned what each one of you must learn as supervisors. You have the right to document everything as it relates to safety and performance, but you can diagnose nothing. Documentation means writing down specific facts about observed behavior, staggering or slurred speech, for example. Not that someone looked weird or out of it. If you observe irregular behavior, you should write it down whether or not it results in disciplinary action. In this particular scene, Victor's case is a little more complicated because if he is an insulin-dependent diabetic, he doesn't qualify to drive under DOT regulations. And this brings up what you are required to tell an employee about the possible consequences of a confrontation. Joe did tell Victor that if he was insulin dependent, he couldn't let him drive. But you need to tell an employee what he has a right to and all possible outcomes of the situation. Sonny and Joe must tell Victor that he has the right to sign or not sign the consent form for reasonable cause testing and the evidence form that allows the supervisors to confiscate the syringe. They must advise him that a refusal could result in disciplinary action, such as suspension, and the consequences of a test positive for a controlled substance will also result in disciplinary action. Finally, once the employee knows the possible outcomes and gives written consent, he's escorted to the collection site. In that last scene, our driver Victor was cooperative, but you know that employee confrontations are not always going to go that smoothly. In fact, employees often try to persuade and prevent you from challenging them on misconduct or policy violations. We call these excuses employee defense strategies, and they're listed in your manual's Appendix B. These defenses can take the focus off the workplace issues, and when you're distracted, it's real easy to fall into what we call supervisor traps. You'll see plenty of employee defense strategies and supervisor traps in our next series of scenes. At the end of each scene, I'll identify them for you.
You know, Sandra, ever since you started working here, I always felt you were a good employee. But lately, your work and attendance record has been bad. You're forgetting the simplest things.
Oh, come on, Sonny. What's a few sick days? It's not like I don't have the time built up. Not everybody's here every day.
But Sandra, 4 unexcused absences in a 5-week period, all of them Mondays. I'm noticing a pattern. This is a 5-day-a-week company, and it's no secret that the quality of your work is down. You come back with shortages, and paperwork goes unsigned.
Who told you that? There's nothing wrong with my work. Who's been picking on me?
Why are you acting surprised? It's all here in your file. It even says that you had a previous warning. Whenever I talk to you about your behavior, you always tell me it's none of my business, to leave you alone, and then you walk away. Well, it is my business. It's company policy. You've read it and you've signed it just like everybody else who works here. It's part of the conditions of employment. Come on, you haven't told me you're sick or hurt or anything, so I have to assume that there's something, somewhere, that's affecting your job performance.
My personal life's none of your business.
I know that. I just want to get your work back up to par. Let me give you another one of these lists of our company's 800 EAP numbers. These organizations have helped a lot of people.
I already have one in my driver packet.
Well, then why don't you look at it? Whatever's going on is getting the better of you, Sandra, and it's my responsibility to make sure everyone here is safe. Now, I'm going to write up this meeting, and we're both going to sign it to show what went on. And then I'm going to give you 2 weeks to improve, and then we'll check out where you are.
Although Sonny might later find out that this was an early symptom of substance use on or off the job, the present issue is that Sandra's missing work. And like any supervisor, Sonny's responsibility is to have enough people on the job to get the work done. Sonny correctly confronts Sandra by identifying the problem. He says, "Lately your work attendance looks bad," and he reminds her that she's forgetting the simplest things. Sandra's first defense strategy is switching the subject to others. She says, "Not everyone's here every day." Sonny avoids the trap of getting sidetracked here and calmly states the facts. 4 unexcused absences, all Mondays. And he says he notices a pattern. Sandra then responds by pleading innocence. "My record's not bad," and by blaming when she cries, "Who's picking on me?" Sonny doesn't take the bait, and instead refers her to her file, successfully focusing only on the issue at hand. Now Sandra uses anger by implying he's prying into her personal life, but Sonny avoids the trap of getting involved. Instead, he agrees that her personal life is not his business, and he seizes the opportunity to refer her to the company's EAP listings. When she rejects his concern, he clearly explains the consequences of the meeting, the need for her signature of consent, and what her review period will be before they meet again. It's important to remember here that when Sonny said, "We'll both sign," Sandra did have the right to refuse. If you were the supervisor, you'd have to give her the opportunity to sign the behavior incident form, and then tell her what the consequences would be if she didn't sign, and if there wasn't improvement. Did you figure out the employee defense strategies used here? If so, congratulations. Now, let's go back to Sonny and Sandra to see how that 2-week review period turned out.
Sandra, per company policy, I have a witness here for this meeting. Do you recognize these?
Of course I do. My name's right on the bottle. It's my cold medicine. I must have left them in the cab when I came to punch in. What's the big deal?
If you're on any kind of medication, you need to tell a supervisor. When Bob found these in your cab, he didn't know what to do. So he told the supervisor. You know our company's policy and procedure.
Yeah, so it slipped my mind. Big deal. I'll go let Charlie know now.
That's not good enough. Given the fact that today you missed a pickup after dispatch reminded you, and your previous record, and the warning shown here, I'm concerned. If this is cold medicine, we still have to talk.
Are you saying you think...
I'm not saying anything, except that I need to have this tested before I let you go back out on the road again. Are you willing to cooperate?
You've just seen steps 1 through 4 of a constructive confrontation. Not only did Sonny avoid the trap of getting angry at Sandra or becoming sidetracked, but also you'll notice that Sonny was prepared. He knew what problems had come up during Sandra's 2-week review period. And he had another supervisor present when he identified and documented his observations. By confirming his observations with Sandra, he gave her an opportunity to explain about both the pills and the missed pickups. Taken together, the incidents added up to a need for reasonable cause testing. Although Sandra tried the defense strategies of promises, I'll tell Charlie right now, and anger when she tried to accuse Sonny of implying the pills were a controlled substance, Sonny stayed clear and calm about the issues he was addressing and avoided the trap of getting sidetracked or angry due to her responses. So, what's most important here? The fact that Sonny documented, he did not diagnose. He addressed employee misconduct as it related to company policy. Sandra's policy violations concerned two different issues, and Sonny needed her to sign both a behavior incident form and an evidence form, as well as her written consent for testing. Now, I want to say again that if Sandra agreed to cooperate, you'd have to clearly forewarn her of the potential consequences of signing or not signing the forms. Now, let's go on to another scene.
Hey, Jerry. Huh. I've never seen you get out of a bus like that before. Hey, are you okay? Hey, Jerry. Hey, I'm talking to you. I mean, are you all right? Go on, get in the office now. All right, Jerry, why don't you go on in and sit down? Say, why don't you tell me what's going on, Jerry? You know, this is not your normal behavior. You're dropping things in the lot, you're staggering. You won't look at me, you won't even talk to me. Hey, come on. What's going on? I gotta know. Look, if you refuse to answer me, that's insubordination. And I'm gonna have to go upon my observation, and that could mean some very strong disciplinary action for you. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is there anything you want to tell me? Look, Jerry, you still haven't told me what the problem is. Now, based upon my observation of your behavior, I can't let you drive. Now, do you understand what that means? Because I'm going to have to call in another supervisor down here. Do you want me to do that? Okay. Yeah, Joe, this is Paul. Right, can you come down here for a second? I got a little problem. Yeah, thanks. Okay, now when Joe gets down here, I'm going to have to ask you some questions, and we're going to have to document this. Yeah, come on in.
What's up, Paul?
Hi, Joe. I just need you for a little bit of time here. Would you pull up a chair, please? Yeah, well, what I want to do here is I want to follow company policy right to the letter, okay? And I need you to help me document what I'm going to say and his behavior. So what I want to do is I want to send Jerry over to the collection site for reasonable cause testing, since he won't talk to me, won't respond to me in any way.
Great, let's start the documentation.
Okay. And then you understand what we're doing here, Jerry? Okay. Now, based upon what I've observed, Jerry, you gives me reasonable suspicion that warrants reasonable cause testing. Now, you have the right to refuse to be attested, but I want you to be aware that you'll be unqualified to drive. Do you understand that you're going to be unqualified to drive? By both our company policy and the DOT guidelines. Plus, there might be some very strong disciplinary action. Do you understand that? All right, Jerry, do you consent to be tested? Okay. Now, Joe and I have both been witness to the fact that you refuse to be tested. And I want you to know that under company policy, you could be fired. Now, do you understand that? Okay, guy, you give us no choice.
A supervisor does have the right and the obligation to address irregular behavior, because irregular behavior can become a safety issue. Our supervisor knew he shouldn't speculate on what Jerry's problem was, but it was the supervisor's responsibility to follow the 4 steps of a constructive confrontation, even without cooperation from his driver. So what did he do that you should do? First off, he asked the driver what was wrong. He gave Jerry a chance to explain, not once, but twice. Always ask an employee what's wrong at least that many times, and make sure it's done confidentially. Secondly, supervisors have to tell an employee what they've observed and what they're obliged to do as supervisors. You also have to tell the driver what your company policy requires, and you must forewarn him of the consequences. If he signs and the testing turns out positive, there will be disciplinary action as well. Paul managed to follow all the steps correctly, right down to making sure another supervisor was present. Now, how did you do? When the employee isn't argumentative or silent, but really upset, how do you respond then? Let's see how Sonny responds in the next scene.
Your safety record looks really bad. 2 collisions in 2 months. And a lot of absences. What's wrong?
I don't know what to do. I really need this job. My husband ran out on me. It makes it so hard to concentrate. It's just a mess right now.
I appreciate that you're upset. You know, we have an employees assistance program here.
I knew this would happen. I can't do anything right. No wonder my husband left.
Well, why don't you get into one of these EAP groups? My own sister was in one when her marriage broke up, and it really helped her. No man is worth your job. Well, if I were you, I'd just tell him to go.
You're right. You're right, Sonny. It's been so tough lately, but you make it sound like I can get through this. But I don't want to go to some group. I'd rather have you help me.
I think you better just call someone from the company's EAP list who knows how to help you. I'm no expert.
I thought you just said you'd help me. I might as well just quit right now.
Maybe you're right. You should. Is that what you want? You want me to fire you?
When someone has tough personal setbacks, it may be even harder to keep a confrontation focused. In this case, Sonny allowed himself to fall into a few traps. When Sonny confronted his driver about her safety record, she responded with tears and helplessness. Here, he did the right thing. He responded with firmness and compassion by saying, "I appreciate that you're upset." Then he referred her to the company's EAP program, but he didn't refocus the conversation on the issue at hand, her safety record. At this point, the driver continued in the same personal vein, interrupting Sonny with self-pity. "I can't do anything right," she cries. "No wonder my husband left." Sonny has now trapped himself. He's caught up in her personal problems, even offering his own example of how his sister was helped by the EAP. When a supervisor tries to help by giving personal advice or pep talks with that kind of conviction, as you can see, it makes things worse. Of course, the employee sees the personal connection and opens up more. At this point, Sonny's driver responds with friendliness and manipulation, because Sonny's pretty much turned away from the issue at hand and is now caught up in helping her. It's not her fault that she thinks she can call on their friendship for some support. But Sonny says, maybe you better just call someone from the EAP list. I'm no expert. That's a good start getting back on track. But now the driver reacts with hopelessness. She tells him, "I may as well quit right now." Sonny's frustration gets to him, and instead of getting back to the safety record problem, he blows up. Whenever you take someone else's problems personally, it's hard not to get angry or frustrated when they don't take your advice. After all, they asked. That's why it's best to stay focused on the work issues. Because now, even if Sonny does fire his driver, he hasn't learned how to successfully confront problems and will probably continue to hire and mismanage employees in the same way. Knowing where to draw the line between professional concern and personal involvement can come up in other circumstances as well. Here's another scene dealing with that subject.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Sweeney. Yeah, I'll check the situation out right away. Lou, I just got a call from a Mr. Sweeney, a grocer in the Sunset District. He says he saw one of our drivers smoking pot. Now, I don't know if there's anything to this. I sure hope not. Who's the driver on that route?
I'm not sure. Let me check. It's Steve Jensen.
Okay, listen, I want you to get a hold of him, and I want you to tell him to park it. And I want you and Tony, the safety manager, to go over there and check Steve out immediately, okay?
This is 526. Do you copy?
This is 526, over.
What's your 1020, over?
I'm at the corner of 11th and Harrison, over.
Steve, this is Lou. As of right now, your vehicle is out of service. I want you to park it and wait for me there. Over?
What? What do you mean, over?
Just park it, Steve, and wait for me. Dispatch out. I'm gonna grab Tony and I'm on my way.
Okay.
Hello, Paul? Lou. Yeah, Tony and I are out here with Steve. He seems okay. I mean, he's talking straight, and he doesn't appear to be impaired in any way. You know, Steve rolls his own cigarettes. Yeah, he showed us his tobacco pouch, and I've taken some as a sample. What should we do now?
Well, I'm not sure, Lou. What's your number there? Okay, well, let me call our attorney, and I'll get right back to you.
Okay.